Hey Jake, how's it going?
Hey Arteh, good, good. How are you?
I'm really, really good. I'm kind of like slightly panicking because my camera's going in and out of focus, but just bear with me if it does that,
Great,
please.
you look great as always.
Thank you, and so do you, my brother. So
Well, I'm
where
learning from you. We all just want to be a little bit more like you, Arteh.
oh, don't say that because that's not true. Whereabouts are you right now?
I'm in my studio and office in Leyton.
Nice, nice.
I've
Okay,
got like,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah, you're in, which is right near you're near the station, aren't you? Yeah, of course, yeah, because I used to be in that studio.
yeah. Those were
Awesome.
good times.
Exactly. Well, first of all, let's just kind of go into a little bit of a introduction to you, Jake. So I'm excited to be with you this evening. I'm excited to kind of really ask you some cool questions and just kind of like you're going to speak from your heart anyway. You always do, but you basically I met you years ago. It must have been maybe even 2009, probably. I met you.
Yeah,
I was working as a studio assistant, and you were working with a photographer at the time.
yeah. I was assisting on the Observer with a woman called Suki Danda.
That's right. That's right. And I remember I don't know what it was, but when I was up there, like doing my studio assistant jobs, like back in the works, the studios in South London, which is an amazing complex, by the way. And I was there and I was just saw you, and I don't know why, but you seemed friendly.
That's
you
good.
seemed,
That's good.
you seemed approachable. So I was like, okay, well, let me just like connect with him and say hi. How can I help you out with something? And then what's happened, what's kind of prevailed from that is that I ended up kind of sharing a studio with you, having an office space with you, working on shoots with you, and then obviously going off to do my own shoots as well later on. But yeah, it was a great way to connect with you, and you were just so friendly and open. So
I think actually that moment of meeting you, you were just like, "Do you have a card or something?" And I think I probably had a card, and I just left it with you. And you made an impression. Anyone that's met you will know the positive impression you're going to make on people. And I think that links really to the theme of our chat, being relentless, because you're working as a studio assistant and you're going above and beyond, and you're going to approach people you don't know, you've never met, to then strike up a working relationship that's lasted for over 10 years.
absolutely. Yeah. It's crazy when I think about the time. But also, I just want to welcome everyone who's joining us at the moment. Hi everyone. I hope you're had a good day so far. I'm with Jake Green at the moment. He's in his Leyton studio, and we're going to talk a little bit about basically being relentless and achieving and wanting to, I guess, persevere and achieve what's in your heart to do as a creative person. And Jake's got lots of great advice. He's helped me so much in my own life. So if you have any questions, just put it in the question box, in the comment box, and I'll just relay that to Jake, okay? Hi, Facebook user. It's coming up as Facebook users. I can't see your name, sadly. I think you have to register with StreamYard and Facebook so they can kind of just let your name be seen. But don't worry, you can always introduce yourself in the comments as well. But it's good to have you guys. Thanks for joining us. So I'll be looking out for
Hi,
your
everyone. Hi.
cool. So yeah, so I was saying that with Jake, I met him, oh my gosh, like yeah, over 10 years ago, obviously, and just had some great experiences with assisting him and then working in his studio with him, having an office space in his studio in Leyton, and just kind of seeing how he's just kind of developed in so many different ways, like author, the books that he's created, the projects he's done, and you just have that spirit about you that you just never give up, Jake, and that's what I love about your spirit.
Yeah, and I think I don't really look at it as there's ever any option to give up. Why would you give up? You just got to keep doing what you're doing. A big question for photographers is, are you busy? How have you been busy? Everyone wants to know, are you getting work? Have you got a lot of commercial work? Are you successful? Well, I think you're the author of your own success, really. Because, when you're not busy shooting for other people, you have to be doing your own project, don't you?
Absolutely, I feel so. Yeah,
Personal projects are the things that are going to be the pillars in your career, I think, not your commercial work.
That's an interesting take on it. I mean, I totally agree with you, by the way, but I think maybe not every photographer thinks like that.
Well, no, that's fine. I mean, I guess that's my way of thinking about it, and I think that's why we get along, because we've always had a very specific strong identity of what we want to do and where we want to go.
Absolutely.
You know?
I think it's like with your work, it very much is about, I think, connecting with people, connecting with communities, connecting with maybe ways of life that we're not too familiar with and stuff like that. And it kind of connects us as human beings. And I'm more very much about that kind of that connecting as human beings as well through stories.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think if you can't, because anyone can point at camera at something amazing or spectacular and get a good picture, really, with autofocus and the technology we have is quite straightforward. But I think if you can make a connection with what you're photographing, people then make a connection with your photograph, the content of the work you produce.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot.
I live by that. If I'm not connecting with a project, I start projects and throw them in the bin, because if I can't connect with that project, I'm not going to be able to see it through. You know, it's a long, they develop over a long time. If you imagine you start a project tomorrow and you're thinking, well, it may end up being an exhibition, it may end up being a book, or, you know, this project might be living with you and in your creative practice for 10 or 15 years. You have to really believe in that project.
100. Well, let me ask you something, Jake. So, for instance, you've worked for like some incredible clients, right? You know, so alongside your personal work, you've worked for people like Sony, Vodafone, Google, Phaidon, Warner, Nike. You know, you've worked for some big brands and stuff like that. You know, I mean, I guess that's all part of your journey, and that's all part of how you are. I guess, you know, carving out a career for yourself. So it's not just the personal stuff, it's also like the commercial stuff too.
Yeah, I think I read early on about something from Richard Avedon about the way he worked and how he was successful, and he was balancing this commercial practice with his fashion, with his personal work. And it made me realize that you can do commercial work that's not yours. It's a different kind of collaboration, isn't it?
Yeah, go on.
Well, and it's a different level of work and a different level of production, maybe, and you can learn a lot from it, and that, in a sense, can help to finance your personal projects.
No, of course it can. I think I know the quote that you're even referencing. I think it says the thing is, like, portraits is what he loves to do, but like fashion is what he pays his bills or whatever, something like that. Like, I think there was a bit more eloquent way of saying it, but, you know, he was saying portraits is pretty much what he loves to do, but fashion is pretty much what kind of keeps the lights on, pretty much. And so he's kind of balancing those two directions, which is great, because actually they end up complementing one another. And I find that works a lot, you know, in terms of your commercial work and your personal work. You know, you can let them filter into each other.
Yes, definitely. And one of my biggest goals, I think the biggest goal of any creative, is that your personal work becomes your commercial work. You know, your personal work becomes commercially viable and sustainable. And I think that's really what I'm aiming towards. And that when you're doing commercials, people are taking your voice and commercializing it, rather than you just turning up and doing as you're told, which is, a lot of people experience that as a commercial photographer. I've had that, where I've had a drawing of what we're supposed to photograph and we recreate that exact drawing, you know? It's really common.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because you're right. I think when people think that when you go into a big commercial job that there's a lot of creativity, but there isn't really. There's like you pretty much show up and you have to kind of do what they've kind of already planned. The art direction's already set, like the models are already set, and you pretty much have to recreate what's on a very kind of curated mood board. In truth, yeah.
And I used to really struggle with that. I used to make a lot of effort to shoot what I was going for, what we planned, and something experimental, something different, something new, or something better maybe, or more spontaneous. And it always just ends up in a hard drive. They're like, we love it. Yeah, we love it. But that's not been approved. So that's not going to get used. And I understand why, because when you've marketed your own product and your own projects, your own talks, you have to get that marketing really, really right. You have to give it a lot of thought, can't just go, right, that's a really amazing shot, I'm just going to put that out. It has to, like a lot of these big campaigns, they go through market research and focus groups and stuff like that before they even pick a photographer. So you're the last person coming into this equation.
Yeah, that's so true. And they pretty much need someone who's capable of doing something and knows how to deal with pressure and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not like you're not the linchpin in the whole thing by any means.
Not usually. There are rarely any photographers out there that they're the only person that can possibly produce that work.
Of course, nowadays, yeah.
There's so many people, and there's so many people producing similar work. You just go, you're not available, get you in. So I think that, and that's why personal work is really good, because there are times when people say, this is what we want, this is what you do, and we want you to do that again. And that can be satisfying. And you experiment your own work, you use your own projects to experiment, I think.
Oh, Rob Joseph just said, hi, Arteh and Jake. How are you doing, Rob? It's good to see you on here again. It's always good to see you in the chat, my friend. Definitely ask Jake lots of questions. We're going to talk a little bit more about being relentless and just overcoming those limiting beliefs and just keep on going. That's the whole thing. Now, I want to ask you, Jake, right? Just some quick questions here. You described yourself in our previous conversation. I said, how would you describe yourself? You said you describe yourself as a relentless creator, and I was really like, that's quite an interesting way of thinking about yourself. So, like, what would you? Why do you think that's actually? Let me rephrase my question. What does it mean to you to be a relentless creator, and why is it so important for us to have that trait about what we do?
I think you used a really great word that can help to describe it earlier, which is perseverance. Relentless is never giving up and never stopping, never having a break. You don't need it when you're doing a career. When you've chosen this career, we've chosen it, right? We've chosen a career that we think we're good at or we love. There's no reason to stop. So just, you start a project and the first edition of that book might not be right, or that first edit, the first time you shoot someone might not be quite right. You can reshoot, and you can go back and you can retrain and you can test and test and test. Your first ever commercial might not be the best one. Doesn't mean you're never going to do commercials again. So you go to the next commercial and, things like that. It's like you miss the first bus, you wait and you get on the second bus, or you run to catch up with that bus. It's just ongoing, constant activity. That's what I think.
Well, why do you think so many people don't have that relentlessness in them? Like, what stops them from like persevering, do you think?
I think there's a fear of failure. I think that's a massive part of it. People are scared that they're going to get laughed at. There could be public failure. I remember the first time I did the first ever Kickstarter I did, I was very apprehensive. Someone recommended that I did it. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I publicly ask people to fund my work. Why would I do that? That's very public facing. But it was good advice from someone I really highly rate. So I took the advice and I ran with it. And that's even a measure of being relentless, because with a Kickstarter, unless you really, really push it, you're not going to achieve it. So, I've not failed a Kickstarter, but I can imagine that if you did, it would be quite humbling and it would hurt. That would be a failure.
You'd cry.
You'd have a little tear in your eye, wouldn't you? You would. It wouldn't be nice. It wouldn't be nice. And you know what? You want to smash your Kickstarter. You want to be the biggest Kickstarter. I think partly people are never satisfied with what they achieve. You always want to do more. You want to achieve more. You could do the biggest shoot of your life. A week later, you're feeling empty and like, what am I doing with my life?
That's so interesting. So interesting.
Don't you find that?
No, I do find that. That's why it's so interesting to me, because I've had like some highs in my life and in career, and I got to a point I was like, wow, was that it? Like, wasn't this supposed to make me happy? Like, it was a rude awakening that it's not the thing that you're acquiring that makes you happy. It's never that.
Yeah. It's for me, it's the process that makes me happy, not the end result.
Wow.
Especially when you're meeting people and photographing them and discussing projects and discussing their work and what they do. And with this professional life that we lead as photographers, especially portrait photographers, we get to meet so many amazing people. And I've just seen so many amazing things that I would never have seen. I forget the money, forget any of that. I need money. I've got a family to feed. Yeah. Like that's a big pressure, but more above it all, if I had all the money in the world, I would still want to meet all those amazing people. Like we would have never met if it was never for work.
So true.
You know?
100%.
But I think coming back to your point about one of the biggest obstacles is fear, that people are scared that they're not good enough, and that then they just stop and they move on to something else, maybe.
Yeah. And the thing is, people who persevere and people who continue on, it's not that they don't have that fear of failure. They do.
Yeah.
But it's that thing about like, oh my gosh, there's something ahead of me that I want even more than giving into this fear right now. Like there's a pull, you know. And I think, and also just going, so Rob has just asked a cool question. He says, can you see that, Jake, on the screen?
Yeah.
He says, Jake, what's the importance of personal projects? I mean, that's a really good way to kind of like, you know, include that answer in there too. Because like the pull of like a personal project, you know, because you're creating something that maybe no one cares about. Potentially. No one cares about it. But then you believe in it. You just believe in it. Like, you know, how do you kind of negotiate that in your mind? Like, someone might not even care about this, but I still feel compelled to do this.
Well, I think even if no one cares about it, it's still practice, and practice is going to make you better.
Wow.
I think we all need to practice. I think the practice I have had in my personal projects, before I flew around the world for commercial work, I flew around the world on my own pocket on my personal projects.
Same.
So that prepared me for commercial work. You know, and it didn't feel so alien to me when I started traveling for commercial work. Lighting techniques I might use in commercial work, I would then maybe carry across to personal work. So the two things do go hand in hand, like we were saying earlier. But I think that is the importance of testing and proving yourself as well. Why should I commission you? You're not even commissioning yourself.
Wow.
That's a good one. That's very true, isn't it?
It's so true. It's so true. I hope that's kind of like resonating with people today. I feel that's so powerful. Like if you're not willing to kind of commission yourself in terms of like put your money where your mouth is and really go out and basically commit to what you believe in, then why do you think someone else is going to believe in what you're doing? Like if you don't, you know? So I think that's powerful. That's a really powerful statement, I think.
But that is very difficult to get to that point where you believe in yourself that much. And I think we've talked before about this ego you have to have as a photographer or as an artist or as a creator, as a musician, to say, you know, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to, if you're an MC, you're going to, or a singer, you're going to get on the mic and you're going to do the open mics and perform in front of people. It takes a lot.
It takes a lot. It does. It does.
The best way to overcome those obstacles is just to do it.
So let me ask you, Jake, what are you currently like pursuing right now? What are you currently, you know, relentlessly pursuing right now?
I'm still practicing, testing different kit, testing different lighting setups. I often take lights back home and test at home to see what the next portrait is going to be. I don't want to test on a portrait that is going to be a new subject or a new project. I want to test at home and with stand-ins and my family and friends and stuff. So I'm still learning. I'm pushing my printing and my book binding and bookmaking process. So still self-publishing. Building up the 3rd edition of Drink My Sweat Volume 3, which is my coffee series. So I've got Coffee Kenya, Coffee Colombia, and the new one coming probably in the year or so is going to be Central America.
These are your books that your book.
Those are my books. So they're projects that have manifested themselves in the book form, which work as a book and look good, and to me they feel good. So working on that. I've got a couple of personal projects, but I don't really talk about personal projects until I'm a bit further down the line with them. So even the Central America, I shot that in 2019, and it's only now that I'm starting to talk about that. I've got a really nice piece that I shot in Atlanta that I've just turned into a video, which I've got some really lovely spoken word alongside the skills for a slightly different format, which I'll send you actually, Arteh. You can have a preview of that, and then I think I'll be putting that out on my website and my socials in like a couple of weeks, probably.
I love that. Thank you. I'd love to get that, to see that kind of private view or that preview of it. That'd be great. You're always working on something, Jake. That's the thing about you. And also going back to what you said about testing and stuff like that. I think when I was working with you years ago, I remember like, you know, we'd be in the studio in Leyton and you'd be like, okay, we're doing a shoot in a few days or something. Let me just test the lighting out and stuff like that. And I learned a really good lesson from you about just, you know, because it's about really kind of getting your hands on things, trying things out, making mistakes. Like the more mistakes you can make, you know, in like rehearsal, the better you'll be on the day. You know, I think it's really important to kind of just get stuck in. I think it's really important with your lighting equipment, everything.
Yeah, it's rehearsal. It is rehearsal, isn't it? Because you're not going to be in a theatre production on a stage doing it. That's your first time you did it. You're going to be practicing your lines. I learned that actually. I had a big thing about talking about my work. I found it very difficult. I was like, my work's going to speak for itself. And I think early last year, I read Michelle Obama's book, and there's a bit she talks about with her speeches. She memorized them until she could put every comma and full stop and dot every I off by heart. And I thought, you know what? That's the key. You just have to practice. You just have to do it. And a rehearsal, a lighting test is a rehearsal, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really respect that because I think in my own life, I realize that now that the more prepared you can be, oh my gosh, the more relaxed, the more ordered, the more confident you can be on the day. And it really comes through when you're prepared. It really does.
Definitely. And you really don't get a chance to test like that on a shoot. We worked together a long time ago, and we were on a shoot, and you were keeping an eye on the digital, and you're like, out of focus. And I'm like, Arteh, I don't want to hear out of focus on the shoot. We just whisper those things. We talk quietly. We want to make this look like a smooth operation.
Yes.
Like we've got it all under control. Your client doesn't want to be having any doubts about have they got the right person for the job, you know, just, I mean, that was a long time ago. Obviously, we don't get things out of focus now. But no, you're using now all Leica equipment, which is amazing. I'm using all manual focus, so there's no out of focus now.
now it's done away with.
yeah, that's behind us. That's behind us.
Well, so maybe. Well, let me ask you something, Jake. I want to ask you another question. So, when we were talking before, you kind of revealed a bit of your philosophy about your life and your career, which I thought was quite interesting. And I just hadn't really heard someone phrase it in this way before.
Okay.
I said, you know, how do you feel like about your career, things like that? And you said, you don't see your career as really a career. You see it as an ongoing piece of work.
Okay. Yeah.
And I found that really fascinating. Like, so like the project that you're working on right now, you've already told me about, like, obviously the commercial work you're doing, coffee, Kenya, you did. So tell me a little bit about some of the things you're doing and how is this building into this ongoing project of Jake's life? Like, you know, what do you want to tell us with your collection of work and projects?
Well, I want to produce work that when I'm no longer professional or I retire or someone picks up in 20 years' time, it resonates. You know, they can tell the quality. I don't want it to be a rush job. I'm not producing a book today that I'm going to sell out in a year. If I do a big run of a big book like Pie and Mash, you know, if I sell those in 5 years, that's fine. You know, I'll do Pie and Mash, the 3rd edition, which I have here actually. So Pie and Mash 3rd edition is that it started off as a soft cover, then it was perfect bound, and now it's a hardback. And I've got thousands of these when I printed them. You know, that was about a year and a half ago. And if I sell them long term, that's all that matters. You know, I don't want to have to reduce the price, make it super cheap, get it on Amazon. No, I want to be anti-mainstream in a way. You know, do things a little bit differently, more of a slow mover. Have some patience with my projects because the Bookmaker's Studio, for example, was about showing much more creative and innovative leaders in the children's book illustrator field, which at the time was very mainstream, and over the last 5 years it has evolved amazingly well. Coffee Kenya is about people understanding where their food comes from. Not just coffee, but all of the food that we eat. You know, there's food coming from all over the world, all over the country. So it's about, you know, these projects are things, it's almost an ongoing body of work and a legacy.
Wow.
You know, even the hip hop stuff I did with Big Smoke magazine, that was, we're not misrepresenting anyone. We're representing people as artists, as individuals. And even I look back on that work and I'm pleased that we did that.
Wow, can I just kind of jump in there a little bit? So you mentioned like you mentioned Coffee Kenya, Pine Mash, and was it the Illustrator Studio? Was it?
Yeah, no, the Bookmaker's Studio.
Bookmaker's Studio, so I keep getting that. And all these basically you can actually look on Jake's website, jake.green. I'm correct. Jake.green, and you can actually find. He actually bought a really good domain, which is great.
I'm lucky with that.
Yeah, you're lucky that I'm sure. Jake.green, my gosh, how did you get that? But you can basically, you know, check out his website and see all the projects on there, and also some films that you've got on your website as well, which kind of like talk about Coffee Kenya and different things like that, which I had a chance to look at before as well, which is great. And I love that because I think one thing that's a theme in your work, and hopefully it's coming through as a theme in my work too throughout my life, is this kind of respect for origins of things, the respect for the people who are part of those, or creating those things, the individuals. I mean, individuals in general, just like in terms of connection with people and stories. I feel like your legacy is very much about just connection with people and using the medium of photography to tell those stories. But I think whenever I look at your work, I always feel like this person, you've always had a relationship with these people. And you're kind of, it's coming through in the work. That's my interpretation.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think with your work and my work, it starts off with having respect for your subject, and the work, if it goes well, becomes a celebration of that subject, a celebration of people, of what they do and their craft, and a celebration of someone else, you know, on the other side of the lens. I'll always approach a portrait of someone as if I'm taking that portrait for them rather than for myself even. You know, documenting their life. It's not my life. So they go along, you know, become part of a body of work, yes, but that picture is probably going to be more prominent if it's a good picture. If it captures their essence, it's probably more prominent to them than it is to me. I've photographed thousands of people. They might not have been photographed as many times, you know. Some people we've photographed have probably only ever been photographed professionally once, you know. That may be the only time. Like, I've visited some of the bookmakers and illustrators as part of the Bookmaker Studio project in studios where they've created amazing masterpieces, and now they're no longer in that studio. So that becomes a veritable document of that time in their life, in their career. I think starts with respect and turns into a celebration. I think that's a big thing.
Why is that important to you?
I think there's a lot of negativity in the world, and a lot of sensationalist photography, a lot of sensationalist art. And I think celebrate the everyday, celebrate the beauty that we're surrounded by. I did a lot of work in like overseas. So I did some work in New York and Jamaica, and some projects that looked really, really good, but they were far away from where I'm from. And I thought, I need to celebrate where I'm from.
Wow.
Behind closed doors, you know, 2 doors down from here could be an amazing artist that I've never met before.
Wow.
And that's where the Skaters project came in. What else? Pie and Mash is a big one for that. The Celestials, they were a white garment evangelical church at the end of my road.
Yeah.
And when you talk about getting to know people, I was there for 6 months, going to church on a Sunday with them.
Are you religious?
No. But it doesn't mean to say that I don't believe in what they do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's respect, isn't it? And we've always had different opinions, but we've always had a mutual respect.
No, 100%. I think that's one thing, because I'm a person of faith, so I go to church every Sunday. But, you know, and you've always been someone who's quite curious about that. And you've always been quite, you know, inquisitive about, like, why do you believe that, and things like that. So that's really, really cool. But I find that fascinating, that like that statement that you just made about, actually, let me explore my local surroundings, let me explore things that are close to me, and rather, because you're right, you can go abroad. I've gone abroad, you've gone abroad, and we found great stories and things like that, and brought them home. But actually, wow, to have appreciation for what's already available to you, it's really powerful to think like that, actually, and to make something of it.
It's digging deep, isn't it? You could live in Great Yarmouth, where you feel you're in the middle of nowhere and you can't think of any projects. If you go to a local chip shop, find out where the potatoes come from, and go and follow those potatoes to the potato farm, meet the potato farmer, and then who's working on the potato farm, the workers, and follow their life, and all of a sudden you've got this immense project. We live in London, so we have a lot on our doorstep. Loads of projects you could do, like loads of places to visit and portraits to make, but
It's powerful.
literally projects behind everything. That's why I think you have to mean it.
You have to mean it.
I think so.
I think that's powerful, guys. Like, so those of you who are watching, like, have you thought? Like, I don't know if you've thought about this. You probably may already have. Like, but have you thought about, actually, what is a project that's literally within, I don't know, yards, or within a mile, 2 miles of me, or something? Especially during COVID times, like when you can't necessarily go abroad to wherever. It's like, oh my gosh, what are we leaving on the table here by not being, not looking around and finding, actually, wow, do I have a personal interest in that? Do I have a personal connection to that? Am I the right person to tell that story? I think in many cases, you are the right person if you have a keen interest in it. And I think, Jake, you're a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I think, and then there's always this thing of trying to do an original project and trying to produce original work. And, someone's already done that project, or someone's already done that. And when I did the Celestials, it was a while ago, and relatively recently, someone produced a book on the same subject called Congregation. I think the woman's name is Sophie Green, and she's an amazing photographer. People were like, "Oh, have you seen it? Just like your project." And I was like, "Yeah, it's amazing. I love it." It's like more people celebrating that same thing. It doesn't have to be one project on that ever. I'd love to do, in those sorts of situations, I'd love to do a group exhibition with my project and her project, hanging in the same space in different ways.
Let me ask you a quick question. So Rob just asked you a technical question. He said, what's your favorite lens that you like to use when you take your portraits?
That's a good question. It has to be a 50mm.
Yeah.
No matter what the make is or what camera system it is, on a digital SLR or 35mm film, has to be a 50mm. I sometimes think it's a 28 or 25 or 35, but all my most favorite shots I've ever taken, I double check what they're shot on, and it's a 50mm. I think if you get a 50mm shot looking like it's shot on wide angle, something special about that composition. Yeah, 50mm is the one.
Do you hear that, Rob? Does that answer your question?
What about you, Arteh? What's your favorite lens?
My favorite lens is a 35mm.
It's good.
Yeah, it's generous enough for me to like tell a story with, and nowadays, because of the resolution on so many cameras, you can crop in quite easily. So 35 is kind of my very versatile option in a multitude of situations.
And it doesn't look overly wide. I think the 35. That's what I like about it. You wouldn't think it's a wide angle lens necessarily.
Exactly. So it kind of has the best of both worlds. It gives you a bit more width and breadth, but at the same time, it's like it controls that distortion. So you haven't got any kind of, was that shot at 21? It's like, no, it wasn't shot at 21. It shot 35. So it looks like it could have been shot on a 50. So
yeah, that's what I love about it. But with the 50mm, what I like about is being able to keep people towards the edge of the frame without getting any distortion.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I rarely put people that far, in terms of that, in the frame, so to speak. So
yeah. But the 50mm is amazing, especially a manual focus 50mm. Like you probably know, like I don't shoot on any autofocus lenses at all. It's all manual focus. So having a really nice fluid manual focus with a shallow depth of field, so good.
Let me ask you something, Jake. So as you kind of like, you're pursuing multiple projects, like you said before that you don't see your life as, you don't even see it as a career, you see it as an ongoing piece of work, you know, and I really love that way of thinking about your career, by the way, because it allows you to have a bit more of a, I think, a bird's eye view of what you're doing a little bit and saying, actually, is this congruent with, you know, what I believe in, my values and things like that, you know. And obviously when it comes to your personal projects, you do have ultimate control over that, you know. Well, hopefully if you haven't got like loads of sponsors or something like that helping you, then you're okay. You know. But yeah, I'm just really also interested in the emotions that you go through when you're trying to pursue and persevere. Like I would love you to tell me about that story about when you met the Queen, or you know, just sorry, when you shot the Queen.
Yeah.
And how you got through
that. One thing I want to add in terms of your legacy and it not being your career, it being an ongoing work. It's not just about the work you create and the relationships you build. It's the way you treat people as well. I think when you think about things like that, I don't want to get to the top. There is no top. No, forget that. There is no top. I worked with Arteh 10 years ago. We're still working together. I don't want anyone to ever have a reason not to work with me because I was rude on a shoot, you know. Or if you're in a sticky situation and you're rude on a shoot, then you need to apologize for that. You need to humble yourself. You know, people make mistakes. But yeah, that was a funny one. So on the way, I can't remember how, I could check how many years ago it was. It must have been at least 10 or 12 years ago. I was called in to shoot for a big accountancy firm who are hosting the Queen touring their offices in Canary Wharf. And I went there and I was using a big Low Pro backpack, which I don't use anymore because it would just break your back using those things. And it will mess up your smart clothes.
Yeah,
I hate that. You can't be using those. It has to be a wheelie now. And so I had this big Low Pro backpack on, and my hair was all done, and in my mind I was smart, and I didn't get any notice in advance. You have to wear, this is a good word of advice, if you ever photograph the Queen, you have to wear a blazer, like a suit and a tie and smart shoes. Now that seems obvious to me now. By the time I didn't know, I was just turning up to a normal shoot.
Yeah.
So I had this check shirt on. I had a check shirt on and jeans and Converse. And when I got there, they were like,
to meet the Queen, yeah.
To me, you know, I thought that's all right. Gosh, I'm cool.
Converse to meet the Queen, why not, eh?
They were black Converse. I don't know. Listen, it was a while ago. Anyway, on the way there, it was windy. I was going into the underground station. I tripped over something, fell, hit my head, messed up my hair. It was so I'd already started off badly. But I picked up my backpack, put it on my back, got there, fine, no one knows, whatever. My head is hurting. And they were like, what are you wearing? Can't wear that. We're going to have to get you a blazer. We're going to have to get you a tie. And you know, the style was collars were small button-down collars. So I had to stuff this tie in to this button-down collar and wear this. They got me a security guard's coat or jacket, which was like XXL. And I'm not a big guy. And at that point, I was like, I'm never letting this happen to me. Again. And you will never see me turn up to a shoot without like knowing myself and being prepared. Like, you know, I did everything. All my batteries were charged. All my lenses were good. Like the job was a good job. Like they were good pictures. I still have them. They're fine. Client super happy, whatever. But I took that as a good lesson to smarten myself up. I thought, this would never have happened to Arteh ever. No way.
Well, how old were you back then, by the way?
I think I must have been about 27.
27. Wow. Okay. So, but that's really interesting because you basically had to just get on with it, though. You had to get on with it and get the job done.
I got on with it, and I got someone to take a picture of me wearing that blazer with my hair mashed up, saying, don't be vain, be humble, but be prepared. I'm not going to meet the Queen wearing a check shirt. So now this is my uniform.
Wow. Well, so basically that was like, it's interesting because throughout, like like I say it myself, in my career, I've had awakening moments, and I've had moments of pain where that have just taught me, yeah, we're not doing that again, Arteh. Never again. And it's been, oh my gosh, I remember I was on a shoot one time and I took one battery. I took one battery in my camera, and oh my goodness, this was when I was much younger, and it ran out. And the client was like, "Oh, can we just try this shot?" And I was like, "Unfortunately, that's my battery's gone, so I can't take any more pictures." And I just felt terrible. So now that never happens to me, And there's so many occasions I know, and so many occasions where you're like, "Oh my gosh, why didn't I just have more cards? Or why didn't I bring a hard drive to download them on? Or why didn't I bring a backup, I don't know, charger? Or why didn't, something?" Oh, yeah.
When you tell that story, I feel it. And I think if any other photographers watching this, you can feel that moment. We've all been in that situation where it's like, where's the spare card? Or where's the back? I was on a commercial shoot in the Galapagos Islands, and I shot throughout a whole day. And by the end of the day, the card was showing corrupt.
Oof.
That's nuts. The thing is, though, in that situation, I could be cool because I've got indemnity insurance. So if anything ever goes wrong in that sense, I can just pay for it all to get redone. So that's quite good advice. I was much more relaxed in that situation, and then I just got some recovery software and recovery whatever, and just got all the files, and it was all completely fine.
Thank God.
Yeah, and always have a good team, because a good team will help you out in that situation. But yeah, that was pressure, and I think everyone has. It's a quite high pressure career, isn't it, photographer? You have a lot on you. Even if you're doing weddings, you're doing press, you're doing commercial, even on a personal project.
Yeah.
You might forget your tripod plate, and then what you're going to do if your plan was to use a tripod?
That's such an important one. Like, you're right, because when you are the photographer, or obviously you're the photographer, and you're, basically the buck kind of does stop with you in terms of, like, because at the end of the day, we need to walk away with a product, and you're the one who's delivering the product, right? So it's like, yeah, you do feel that pressure. I think people don't really they don't really appreciate fully what that is until you're in that position where, people are like, oh, you're just taking some nice pictures, or you're just like, oh, you get to, like, people think your work is glamorous.
Yeah.
And it's actually like, it's obviously the result is glamorous, but oh my gosh, the prep, the whole time I'm thinking, don't forget that, don't forget that, don't forget that, don't forget that, get there on time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Half the time.
I always have to have a list, 100% a list. When I'm not thinking about anything else, I just write my list, and I add to it and add to it and add to it. And I make sure I've got everything on that list and more. If you don't write a list, it's bound to be something you forget. It's to always forget at least something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also a good tip is to start, when you're in a shoot, start prepping, like, even a few days before. Like, start to bring the bag out, put the SD cards in there, put the cables in there, like, a few days before if you can. Obviously, you're busy all the time, whatever. But if you can start to look at your kind of thing that you're taking with you, it's a small trick, but it's like, if you do that, you're just thinking about it. Oh, wait, have I put the card reader in there? Okay, I put the card reader in just in case. Oh, have I put the charger in there? Okay, let me put the charger in there too. Okay, where's the camera? Okay, the camera, you're just kind of doing it in bits rather than rushing. Because I found that's another thing as well. Whenever I've rushed, like the morning before a shoot or something, I've always left something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, like I left the cable that allows me to tether. Darn it,
Yeah. Or you only bought 2 and they're not working, and you wanted a third one. You could bring all the batteries and all the chargers in the world, or like pocket wizards or triggers, and they stop working or something, and you've got to have a backup cable. There's always something.
There's always something. So I think preparation is key. Now let me come back to, like, being relentless, right? When I think about being relentless, I think about, dude, I have something I want to achieve. I have something that is in my horizon, and I want that thing. And I need to have something that's so compelling to me that even though I get 10 phone calls today, even though, you know, my sister-in-law wants to talk to me for an hour on the phone, I'm trying to get her off the phone or whatever, or something goes badly, the assistant doesn't show up, whatever. I'm like, I'm not quitting this. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep myself in state, and I'm going to keep going forward. Right. That's very much for me. And I think what it is for me, I replace like the fear of failure in the moment for the fear of, oh my gosh, if I don't do this, I'm going to regret something. And that keeps me going. Like, you know, just replacing that fear for like, actually, I don't want to disappoint myself in the future.
Yeah.
And that really keeps me going.
I think that's a really good one. It's like you're making a promise to your future self that you've done your best today. That's fantastic. And that's another thing that helps to keep you on track, I think, when you're getting all those 101 different distractions, is collaboration.
Oh, yeah, good.
So if you've collaborated with someone, you kind of now have an obligation to work with them to fulfill your part of the bargain.
I love that.
You know, this is a collaboration. You know, earlier today, I was getting distracted. I'm sending a book to print. I'm doing this deadline, that deadline. If we didn't have this agreement, we wouldn't both be here right now. So that we've drawn each other into this, and the same with a designer. It's the same with a shoot. You're going to shoot someone. You're going to do a photo shoot with someone. That subject is expecting you, so you have to be there. As soon as you've committed to that and drawn in someone to that collaboration, there's a certain momentum that builds behind your work, I think.
Yeah, no, 100%. Accountability is a big part of what keeps you focused, what keeps you moving forward, because we usually will do more for others than we'll do for ourselves in most cases. You know, for yourself, which is, it should be the other way around, really. Like, you don't let yourself down, but it's usually the other way around. Like, if people are counting on you, that actually really fuels you to show up and to be prepared and do all those different things. But also another thing that I think is really powerful is the power of intention. I feel it's really important, because I feel like, like you were talking about it before, in terms of like what you actually want to leave the world, in terms of a legacy and all different things. That's all about intention. And I found that in life, that wherever you aim your intention is pretty much where you're going to land. You know,
right?
You know, and so it's very important if you actually want to have a career where I think you're achieving goals, you feel like you actually have the self-confidence to say, when I set my mind to something, you know, I will do it, and I want to feel that sense of confidence and pride that I can actually do hard things. I can do things that I set my mind to. It's very important to understand what your intention is for that thing. You know?
Definitely. Intention is a very, very good word for that. I think it can be overused, and I think that people have this idea. There's a lot of memes about intention and self-belief. What you have to do is put that intention in place, but then back it up with process and hard work, because you can't just believe in yourself. You have to be prepared to do the boring bits. You have to be prepared to email those 10 printers to get a cost for printing your portfolio, or what lighting kit you're going to use. If you don't do the boring rehearsal, well, I think rehearsal is quite fun actually, but if you don't do that extra day of work before you do your shoot's not going to be necessarily as good. So you have to back up your intention, I think.
Thank you so much, Jake, for that. And also, I just got a really good question from Rob as well. And Rob has just said, who would you both like to collaborate with? Who would you both like to collaborate with? And Rob, do you mean in terms of like collaborate with another creative person, or are you talking about like in terms of photographing someone? Or I guess we can interpret that ourselves. Well, what would you say, Jake, in terms of who would you like to collaborate with?
That's a good question, actually. I'm going to have to think about that and come back to you. Probably someone like the curator at the Barbican. I'd like to collaborate with, and I don't know who that person is, but the curator at the Barbican on an exhibition. And not just of my own work, but maybe a group work on, I don't know, spiritualism or something like that. That would be amazing. Because I think the Barbican do the best exhibition.
We love you. We love you, Barbican. We do love you guys. They're great.
What about you, Arteh? Who do you want to collaborate with?
Do you know, that's such an interesting question, because I end up collaborating with one of my biggest heroes, who's Oswald Boateng. years ago, and I loved it. That was like years of working with him, and it was pure like, hey, let your vision, my execution, and it was beautiful, you know. And that's because I think also, just going back to Rob's question, I think when it comes to collaborating with someone, I feel like if you have an admiration for your collaborator, you know, an actual admiration for them, oh my gosh, that is such a wonderful, what's the word?
It's like a catalyst, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a catalyst, and it's also like a kind of like a lubricant as well. And that sounds like a weird thing to say, but it's like, you know, you're basically so open to like what someone else has to say and what they have to bring to the table, and you're not ever threatened by what they're bringing to the table. Sometimes you can be in a relationship, collaboration, where you'll be like, oh wait, hold on a minute, are you stepping on my toes, stepping on your toes? And it's like, whereas actually when you have that admiration for one another, you're like, oh wow, okay, I realize that you're making me better just by being in your presence. I realize that I'm getting better.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think to myself actually who I would love to collaborate with, and it's hard to think of someone actually who I'd love to collaborate with.
I think because you don't know what it's going to be like working with someone until you've met them necessarily.
100%. It's like, I mean, would I want to work with another photographer one day? Would I want to work with another designer one day? Maybe. I never really think of myself as working with another photographer though, which is a weird thing, but maybe I should think about that, but I haven't.
I think because that's the challenge. I collaborate with a woman called Emma in Spain, and that, I mean, we've been collaborating slowly but surely on and off for a number of years, and everything we produce is, I think, really, really exciting, really interesting. We've got another thing actually in the work that we're working on at the moment. People always ask, well, who took the picture? We're both photographers. Who took the picture? It's like not about who took the picture at all. You know, people often think because I'm more of a commercial photographer, I think, and probably because I'm a male, that I took the picture and she did the styling or she did the set design or something like that. And we just demystify that and go, do you know what? Just whoever took it, I don't know. It could be Emma, it could be me. We literally don't know. I love collaboration, the way that something comes out of it that is completely unexpected and you can't accredit it to anyone. You know, it's like that was the designer came up with something, then you came up with something, and the designer, and backwards and forwards, and it fully evolves, you know?
Yeah, I'm just like on my computer and I'm just like Googling something because, do you know Alex Webb? Alex Webb, he's like a photographer and like a Leica photographer, kind of like a well-known Leica photographer. I think his wife is Rebecca Webb. I think her name, I think it's Rebecca Webb, I think. Yeah, Alex and Rebecca Webb. Yeah, I mean, the one thing I love about their collaboration, kind of, which is quite a good topic, is that they will both shoot. They'll maybe go to an island or they'll go to like a country or something, and they'll both shoot their own projects, but around a similar theme. And they'll kind of do a book together, you know. So it's Alex and Rebecca Webb, and they'll do a book together. And I always thought, oh my goodness, that's such an interesting way to create. But I think once again, they have that trust. Like they're a married couple, they're both artists. They have that, they understand one another, they understand their strengths, you know, intuitively probably at this point.
Yeah.
And they just know that they're going to come up with very different executions to a similar theme or exploration of an island or whatever. And I think they understand that they have, you know, in different tones, but they will complement when they come together. And I find that it's very much about that trust and that knowing of that person and what their strengths are, and saying, okay, do you know what? This person really adds this beautiful accent to what I do, and I bring that wonderful accent to what they do, and the message overall comes through through both of our interpretations. And I think that's a very powerful thing. But I haven't found anyone like that yet, Rob. So I'm looking.
Yeah. I've been like so lucky with my collaborations. Like I've worked with editors, a guy called James Cartwright, and everything we work on together, I really, really love. Melanie Muse, who designs most of my books, Bread Collective, who's designed exhibitions for me and books with me. Like I've just, I mean, did you meet Kieran Farrow? He worked with me for a long time. Every time we work together, it works really, really well. He's a photographer and musician, and I just think, I mean, even in the studio, me and Kevin, Joseph, we've run this studio space for years and years and years, and we really have that bond. We really get on. That's a collaboration.
Well, you're 100% right, and do you know what? I just realised that I feel like I've just discounted so many wonderful people that I've met along by your life. You're absolutely right. There's so many people. There's Alison Wallace, who I absolutely love. Nick. Oh my God, how have I got Nick's surname just now? Nick Hayes, who
I love Nick.
My brother. Amazing guy called Gabri Mazza, who I've worked with a lot with at Leica and stuff like that. Oh, Robin Sinner, many people.
Like, yeah, Robin Sinner's great.
Yeah, many people I've worked with. So you're right. I apologize. All those people that I discounted just then. Jake kind of illuminated me. I was like, yeah.
But I think like it's easy for me to pinpoint those collaborators because we've worked on specific projects together. If it's ongoing influences in your life and in your career, that's different. They are collaborations, 100%. I think I don't know what you would call those people. I wouldn't call them collaborators. Like not colleagues, but like fellow creators. Other people that are on this path where you haven't got a job. You're just making things work and you're making things happen. Like that's a difficult path, but we unite, don't we? Quite often, you know?
Absolutely. I think it's also believing and having that humility to really allow someone else to influence you. And I think it's very powerful. Obviously, you have to be quite selective about who those people are, but it's a very powerful thing. And trust me, I think in my own life, I've seen things that I've created just kind of go from here to here based on allowing certain people to really kind of speak to me and influence me. I'm like, wow, thank you so much for that. I'm very grateful for that community. Now, we're running out of time a little bit, Mr. Jake, but I've absolutely loved chatting to you, my friend. But I want to ask you another question, right? I'll ask you two questions if I have enough time. The first one is going back to this theme of being relentless. Relentless, such a interesting word, isn't it? Relentless.
It is, yeah.
It sounds quite confrontational and a bit aggressive, you know, that word. But I think there's a way of kind of having that kind of quiet relentlessness within you. Like it's like having a quiet confidence. Confidence can be kind of bold and brash, whatever, or it can actually be a quiet confidence. I think relentlessness has a similar kind of way that it can be adapted. So I think you know, a relentlessness within you is almost like this thing that it's not going away. It's there, and it reminds you that you are capable of so much. Yeah. And I want to ask you a question here. So in terms of things that you've achieved, like you know, working with some amazing brands, like once again, like Sony, Nike, Phaidon, Vodafone, whatever, you know, have you maximized those opportunities? Like, have you kind of maybe even over delivered in some cases? How have you done that?
So I think with all commercial briefs, if you have the opportunity, or less commercial briefs, personal projects, any opportunity you have, is there a way to shoot what you need to shoot for that project and maybe shoot something a little extra, a little something for you, a little something for your eye, your portfolio maybe. A lot of photographers do that. And I think that, I mean, once I did a job in the south of France, which wasn't a particularly good job, but it meant I could come through Paris on the way back and take a portrait of an artist that I really, really loved.
Wow, guys.
So I didn't pay for that. I got paid to go to the south of France. It wasn't a lot of money, but I was like, as long as I can come through Paris on the way home, and then I get to go. And if I can try and maybe get access to that artist at the same time, that would be great. You know? Actually, that artist wasn't available. I found something else to do while I was in Paris, another project to shoot. Come back next week and photograph that artist. You know, so I think that is maximizing your opportunities. Shooting, and having something in the back of your mind, a little bit of extra challenge.
Dude, I love that so much. And I think what you just described there, when you've done it a few times, it becomes like habit.
Yes.
You know, but if you haven't met someone who's maybe like told you to think like that, or maybe you haven't even, maybe some people just do it automatically. They always think about how they can maximize and double up efforts and things like that. Some people are just kind of like that way minded, but some people are like, no, I've got this job, I do this job, and I go and I come home, you know, and it's that kind of thing. Whereas you're absolutely right, especially in our creative industry, it's like the opportunities are literally like littered around you if you're willing to look for them and you're willing to kind of just take some action and be a bit bold, really.
Yeah.
And I think that's really an interesting way of thinking about it. I think whenever you get an opportunity to do something, whether you get a client job, and also, by the way, the gentleman I spoke to last week called Richard Seymour, photographer, he also mentioned a similar thing about how you maximize. You say, okay, have you thought about having some video? Have you thought about maybe having some content made? Have you thought about having, I don't know, like something else? Always be thinking about how you can serve in that moment, but also serving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, be thinking, actually, how do I serve myself? Because also the thing is, you want to do this, and you want this to kind of fuel the next thing in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think with relentlessness, it does sound a bit aggressive, but I see it as you're unrelenting. The pressure on you is unrelenting. Your ambition is unrelenting. Like it just doesn't stop. Like, you know, that feeling of you haven't had a lot of sleep. You've done a 16-hour day shoot and you're lying in bed thinking about the next project. What? No one, you don't need that in your life. You know, that's not a peaceful life, is it? That's relentless.
It is.
Creativity.
I by the way, I love that, brother. I love that, because you're right. It's like it's actually like that relentlessness. Sometimes it can keep you up at night, and it can make you wake up in the evening and say, "Oh my gosh, I need to write that down."
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, let me just send that email now. And I think it's something that I want in my life. To be fair, I want it because I always want to wake up in the morning thinking, okay, here's a challenge. Here's something that I get to grow from. And I think when you have that hunger inside you to kind of continuously be growing and developing yourself, that is a relentless desire for personal growth and personal development. And I think one thing that we don't talk about so much in the creative industry is this need to continuously develop yourself. And it's not just the new Mark V that comes out, or the new update on Adobe Photoshop that you need to master. It's not that. It's actually about your thinking and your ability to relate to people and connect to people at all levels of this industry.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said about that. What that other guy said about, on the next shoot, maybe you can do a bit of moving image, or put this skills project. What's it going to be? Could be like a massive poster. It could be a book. It could be. Now I'm looking at, that could become stills but moving image film. You know, how do you challenge expectation and yourself to produce more?
Wow. Yeah.
So he's got a good point. Serve yourself and serve your audience and serve your friends and your collaborators.
Yeah. And also, I think ultimately you want to have a high standard for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure though, isn't it?
It is. But once again, like, we're built for it though, because if it's, I always feel like if it's in you, then there's a way for you to create.
And also, don't give yourself a hard time. If you turn up to that shoot without a battery, it's not the end of the world. It's just a shoot. Don't kill yourself over that. Don't beat yourself up. If you do a shoot and it's a bit rubbish, move on to the next shoot, try and make it better. You don't want to take that relentlessness and that drive as inspiration, but don't let it kill you. Don't let it make it no fun. Still enjoy this journey because it's a privilege. Really.
Love it, bro. And dude, it's a privilege. I love it. I know it's been a privilege talking to you today as well.
You too, Arteh. You too.
Dude, leave me with one thing at the end here. What is your best advice? What's the best advice you've ever got in your career that's kept you progressing, kept you moving forward?
So, yeah, I've had two really good pieces of advice. I've not really had like standout pieces of advice. I've learned a lot of lessons from seeing other people, learning from other people's mistakes in some way. One really good one that relates to photography is keep it simple. You want to do this set design set. I was doing stuff. It was all crazy. This, we're going to take the studio, paint the whole room blue, and then put all this stuff. No, just keep it simple, and it'll be better. You don't need to have all of this David LaChapelle stuff going on necessarily. And if you do want to make it complicated, it has to be to that level, right? And that's very, very difficult. So keeping it simple is really good. Like lighting, styling, keep it simple. That was by a fashion photographer I worked with called David Schleiper. So David, if you're out there, I haven't spoken to you in years now. That's resonated with me, and I think you probably can see that in my work. I went from assisting someone on like 20, 30 pro photo head light flash setups, massive studio sets, to working with David with the 3 light setup. And it was just amazing to see both sides of it. But definitely keeping it simple is good advice. And the other one is help other people as much as you can, but don't let it be to your detriment. So Kevin, who I work with, has always said that to me. We're always helping people out. We're always giving support, but not to your own detriment, because then you can't support anyone else. You know, you won't be able to achieve anything if it brings you down. You know.
I think that's golden advice. I think that's really good advice. And I think so. Keep it simple and help people as much as you can, but not to your own detriment. I think there's a really good piece of advice. Jake, thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Arteh. I can't wait to see you again in person. It's going to be really nice.
Me too, brother. Honestly, like it's been great to kind of dive into your life and your philosophy a bit more. And I'm inspired. Like I was inspired when I used to work with you all those years ago, and how you just continue to kind of produce and kind of just create things that really come from your heart. And I think I've complimented you on that before. I've always said that you have a very community, people-based approach to what you do. And I know that it's very nourishing to not just your career, but also to you as a person, your spirit, your heart, and things like that. And I really respect people who can follow their heart and create work that's meaningful, not just for them, but for other people too. So thank you so much, Jake Green. You're such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, brother. I'll catch you later. Thanks so much for your time.
Cool, man. Love you, Arteh.
Love you too, brother. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.